But first at 6, a story you'll only see right here on ABC 15. 10,000 Americans reported ringing in their ears after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine.
It's called tinnitus, but federal health officials say so far it is not a side effect. In an ABC 15 exclusive, investigator Melissa Blasius talks to tinnitus sufferers pleading for answers and treatment options.
Steve, first, there's overwhelming medical evidence that these COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective against a deadly virus. The people you're about to see say they are not anti-vaxxers nor anti-government. They just want to be heard and helped. It's louder than his car's stereo, and it's the sound Robert Edmonds can't get out of his head.
Yes.
Kind of sound?
Yes. It's a constant high-pitched ring.
This federal government employee came to Phoenix seeking a specialist, hoping for belief and relief for tinnitus that he says developed after receiving his COVID-19 vaccine. In Seattle, George Hu is kind of a COVID hero, helping create COVIDwa.com, a vaccine finder site for his entire state. George got his shot in February.
The very next morning, I noticed I started having what felt like congestion in my ear. And then it got worse by the second day. And the third day, I literally couldn't hear anything out of it.
A doctor prescribed steroids, and George's hearing returned, along with a ringing sound that persists to this day.
What you're going to get from me is the radical, transparent, blunt truth.
Mayo Clinic Dr. Greg Poland tries to dispel myths about the COVID vaccine, but he's not willing to discount a connection between the vaccine and tinnitus. Why? He got it too.
I can't tell with absolute confidence that it was a result of the vaccine. I can only say that it happened an hour, hour and a half after getting the vaccine.
The ABC 15 investigators heard from people all over the country who said they reported sudden or worsening tinnitus to the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS. In all, more than 10,000 Americans, including 217 Arizonans, reported. That's 1 out of every 21,000 people who got the COVID-19 vaccine.
It probably represents what's called an off-target inflammatory condition.
Dr. Elizabeth Connick agrees. She's chief of infectious diseases at the University of Arizona.
Well, they're not making it up, and it's very important not to have them feel marginalized.
The European Union's equivalent to the FDA, called the European Medicines Agency, looked at data from both clinical trials and the initial vaccine rollout. And they're now recommending the Johnson & Johnson-Janssen COVID-19 vaccine add tinnitus to its list of possible side effects. Here in the...
Hey, what's going on, fam? So another quick video. I want to discuss a few things. Colin Powell, Kyrie Irving, and the NFL and the NBA's misinformation campaign. So, first let me say rest in peace to Colin Powell. I will add, unfortunately, that Colin Powell was pretty much used as a tool most of his life, so I can't feel like we've lost a great ancestor or a great person, especially to black society, the way some people are making him out to be or have been. But still, obviously it's not the most classy thing to dance on someone's grave, especially someone who a lot of people do respect. However, just being real and not over glorifying the man because he is dead, because that's what a lot of people do when someone dies. They lie about their legacy. They pretend that a lot of the damage that person didn't happen, etc., etc. But again, even though that me saying that, I'm going to digress. And as I said, to pretty much start talking about him, I'll end with rest in peace, Colin Powell. But speaking of Colin, he died of COVID. Now, people want to talk about, he had other diseases. He had what's called comorbidities, myeloma, if that's how you pronounce it. etc. Which is true as far as I know. As far as I know, that's not a lie. However, the irony is that a lot of the people, even before the vaccine was created or was even a thing, a lot of the people who were dying from COVID were either older people who just have weaker health and weaker bodies in general because they're older. And I'm talking about senior citizen age, 60, 65 and above. Or they had other diseases or multiple other diseases that made COVID fatal. But the news and the sheep puppets who just repeat everything that the news and the media and politicians tell them never mention that, would never talk about that. It was just all Trump's fault. It was all Trump's fault. And this is why everybody needs to wear their mask. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't on the Trumpers' side as far as the mask stuff. And I just thought they were, being typical, spoiled, suspected racists who can't be told to do anything that they don't want to have to do. When a lot of these Trump supporters and Republicans were protesting masks and fighting and arguing with Walmart workers and whoever else about being asked to put on their masks. But now I'm going to say, honestly, I kind of see why they were doing what they were doing, especially with how far things have been taken as far as the vaccine mandates and forcing people to put things in their body that they don't want to put in their body. And of course, Colin Powell was vaccinated, quote unquote, fully vaccinated, and he still caught the virus. And the other excuse that I'm hearing people say is, the anti-vaxxers, which is a misnomer because a lot of us aren't anti-vax. We're just anti this vaccine because most vaccines take years and years. I'm talking about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to develop. And this vaccine was developed in a year. But anyway, these people who they call, quote unquote, are who the sheep media and propagandists and puppets call, quote unquote, anti-vaxxers and unvaccinated. Oh, it's our fault for getting Colin Powell sick. Now, fam, let me ask y'all a question. First of all, before now, because everything has been turned on its head, all history and everything that we were taught before COVID and especially the so-called vaccine came out has been flipped on its head, rejected, pretended like it was never ever said. Most of us who took any kind of science classes in elementary school, middle school, and high school were taught that vaccines create immunity. We were never taught that a vaccine does not work unless everyone else is vaccinated. We were never taught that. Now, all of a sudden, unless 100% or 99.8% of the population is vaccinated, the vaccine is rendered completely useless. So if there's 100 people in the room, if one person is not vaccinated, the vaccine is rendered completely useless. Now, Jen Psaki, the White House spokesperson, said the other day, I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago, that 80% of the country is vaccinated. Now, I looked up numbers, and apparently a lot of the stats are saying only like 56% of the country is vaccinated. But, I mean, I guess that means that the White House spokesperson is spreading misinformation or just doesn't know what she's talking about, because she said 80% of the country. And since I'm supposed to obey the government and what Joe Biden and what their so-called scientists and everything that they say and come out with, I'm going to go with 80% because that's what Jen Psaki, the White House spokesperson who cannot be questioned, said. She said it was 80% of the country. So you mean to tell me that Colin Powell, with an overwhelming majority of the country, but even if you go by the other numbers like 56%, a majority of the country is vaccinated. Colin Powell would have had, but again, I'm going with 80% because that's what Jen Psaki told me, and I don't go against anything she says. Just like a lot of these The sheep and the puppets, they don't go against anything CNN and the government say. So I'm not going against anything that Jen Psaki says, because she's one of the deciders of truth. She's one of the bearers of truth. She doesn't ever tell lies. That's why we have to trust and obey the government and everything that comes from them. And Jen Psaki, she's the main spokesperson for Joe Biden. The number one representative, or the number one person to speak for Biden, is Jen Psaki. That's literally her job title. So I'm not going against anything she says. So she says 80%, so I'm going with that. So if we're talking about especially at 80%, Colin Powell would have had to either A, intentionally be hanging out with unvaccinated people, which I highly doubt, because Colin Powell was not among the quote-unquote peasants. He was among the elites who should be vaccinated, unless of course they're not, because they know it's not necessary and possibly damaging. But I digress. So you're telling me, you expect me to believe that Colin Powell specifically sought to hang around unvaccinated people, because that's what you would have had to do in order to have caught it from only an unvaccinated person, when that's only 20% of the country. Or you're saying that his family and friends, so either A, he specifically sought out to hang out with unvaccinated people, knowing he has a immune weakening disease. That's A. Or B, you're saying that his family and friends are a bunch of anti-vaxxers who caused him to catch COVID and die. But again, family, most of the people who died, even before the vaccine existed, were older people and people who had multiple other diseases. If you were young and healthy, or if you did not have multiple other respiratory or immune weakening diseases, your chances of dying from COVID were almost nil. But we have a media of fear propaganda, and that's how they get everybody to obey and do whatever they say and agree to whatever they want. It's almost like I mentioned in my last video about the weapons of mass destruction and how they use fear propaganda to start passing a bunch of anti-privacy laws like the Patriot Act. The government and the media have realized that all they have to do is bombard people with fear porn, and they can get them to agree to whatever they want. They can start ordering them to do whatever they want, as long as the person feels that, ooh, this is going to protect me from the big bad. George Bush starts passing a bunch of laws to restrict and remove your privacy because the terrorists are going to get you. And now Joe Biden and the Democrats are passing a bunch of violations of your rights based on, ooh, the virus is going to get you. And again, look, I've talked about myself. If I have caught COVID, the most I had was a mild cough, if I've had it. But even if you did, or someone who got quote unquote sick from COVID, did you die? No, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this video. And again, I'll repeat, most of the people who died from COVID were either the elderly, the people who had more than one disease, or both. It was almost a non-existent number of people that died that were otherwise fully healthy, and COVID was the sole and only thing that killed them. And with all these quote-unquote COVID deaths that were being reported since the virus started, it was rarely ever mentioned that the most vulnerable people are really the only people, when you compare the numbers, that were dying from COVID were people who were older or had other diseases, or both. And I also want to ask a question, since everyone's saying that, because everyone's trying to say that, oh, it's because of the unvaccinated, as if, I guess, vaccinated people. See, people keep talking in a way that implies things, even though they won't outright say it. So people keep talking about how if you're vaccinated, you can't spread it to someone else. Colin could have only, it's basically impossible for Colin Powell to have caught it from someone who was vaccinated. That's how people talk, especially when I'm seeing on social media the people who are trying to defend their support of vaccine mandates after Colin Powell's death. So if the vaccine can only be spread by someone who was unvaccinated, that's how you know for a fact that Colin had to catch it from someone who was unvaccinated, because only unvaccinated people can spread the virus. Why isn't anyone talking about the NFL and the NBA's mass misinformation campaign? YouTube is suspending accounts who have 100,000 viewers, 10,000 viewers, 500 viewers, 10 viewers, or 10 subscribers, 100 subscribers, 500 subscribers, 10,000, 100,000, 500,000. It doesn't, even a 500,000 subscriber channel has nothing on the amount of people that the NBA and the NFL reach. Nothing. Hell, you want to talk about the NBA and the NFL, their YouTube channels have millions of subscribers, let alone the people who watch them on TV and follow them on other social media platforms or in magazines, newspapers, etc., video games, whatever, computers, whatever you want to use. The NFL reaches millions, and NBA reach millions, and I'm talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. Yet, even this past Sunday, look it up, the Arizona Cardinals coach was put in COVID protocols because he caught COVID. So if you can only spread COVID if you are unvaccinated, why is the NFL spreading misinformation by putting vaccinated coaches and players in COVID protocols? And why aren't the people who are so adamant about the need to censor misinformation and who agree with censoring misinformation not talking about how the NFL and the NBA are spreading mass misinformation? Because NFL coaches and NBA coaches are required to be fully vaccinated, otherwise they can't coach. Now, the players in both the NFL and the NBA are not required to be vaccinated, but the coaches are. The Saints' entire coaching staff was not allowed to attend the game because they caught COVID. And again, they were all fully vaccinated. Why is the NFL spreading propaganda? And this is just me asking questions. Why is the NFL spreading propaganda and misinformation about the virus? Because y'all talk about the virus as if all the people who attack people who are unvaccinated, you talk about the virus as if you don't care about the vulnerable. You're the reason why Colin Powell died. So you can only assume, unless you know that you're lying, that unvaccinated people cannot spread COVID. So why is the NFL spreading misinformation by not allowing coaches and players who are vaccinated to attend practices, to attend games, to be around their teammates until they test negative for COVID, a virus that they shouldn't even be able to catch if the vaccine worked like how we used to understand vaccines, even though, of course, everything's different now and none of that ever happened, and it was all a figment of my imagination, and everyone in my class is everyone who took biology class in elementary and middle school. It was all a figment of all of our imaginations, and it was a figment of my science teacher's imagination as well, and other people's science teachers and science textbooks. It was a figment of everybody's imagination. Or it was a mass misinformation campaign. I don't know. So again, that leads me to Kyrie Irving. Everyone's enraged about Kyrie Irving attacking his brother because he's making a personal choice. They're making it all about basketball. Notice and peep that no one's making it about his health or how concerned they are if he'll even be alive because he won't get vaccinated. It's all about basketball, which shows that they don't care about the man, which is why he shouldn't listen to them. And I hope he keeps standing on his square. I will admit, I know how these elites do. They get you behind closed doors and they threaten your livelihood, they threaten your career. Who knows what else they threaten? They might threaten your family and your life. So I hope Kyrie stands strong and stands on his square. But honestly, I won't be surprised if they get to him somehow and get him to flip the script. But again, people are worried about Jaylen Brown, one of Kyrie Irving's former teammates on the Celtics, fully vaccinated, caught COVID, had to be put in protocols. Why? Why is the NFL spreading this misinformation? Because only unvaccinated people can spread it. Or is it that, oh, you can, there's a percentage, so you're less contagious if you're vaccinated, but you're somehow more contagious if you're unvaccinated. So a whole bunch of stuff I've never heard of is now the case. All of a sudden now with a vaccine, no, it doesn't, immunity is not a thing anymore. Only now you have sudden percentages and variations of contagiousness. And you have percentages and variations of how much you can catch it, or levels of immunity. You're either level 1 immune, or you're level 2 immune, or you're level 4 immune. So apparently there's levels of contagiousness and levels of immunity. I've never heard of that with the same disease. You can be level 1 contagious or level 5 contagious. The only disease I've ever heard of that's being able to do that. You're level 1 immune or you're level 6 immune. That's why you have to have boosters. And even if you're vaccinated, you have to get the shot. And even then, it doesn't work unless someone else is vaccinated. None of this makes sense to me. But hey, again, I'm obeying, so YouTube, don't suspend me. Don't take down my videos. I just want to know why the NFL and the NBA are being allowed to get away with mass misinformation campaigns. Now, I did confront a few people about this, and I would ask them, hey, how do you feel about the NFL and the NBA's mass misinformation campaign? And someone said to me, oh, the vaccine doesn't stop you from spreading it, but it suppresses it. And I'm like, so you're admitting that you can still spread the virus even if you have the vaccine? So then this is not about either Kyrie Irving's, this is not about Kyrie Irving being selfish to other people or putting other people at risk. You're mad at his personal choice, if what you're saying is true, because you can still catch and spread the virus. But again, unless I guess I'm just not understanding level 3 immunity and level 6 immunity and level 10 immunity. That's new science to me, because I used to understand it as either you're immune or you're not. But now you have stages of immunity, to where you can kind of catch it, but you kind of can't. And then when you get to level 2, you can kind of catch it a little less, but you can still kind of catch it. And then you get to level 3 and you can still kind of catch it, but you still kind of can't. And then level 4, you can still kind of catch it and you still kind of can't. I mean, just me, the type of person I am, that sounds like double talk and triple talk and quadruple talk. But hey, I'm just trusting the science. I remember when they said, oh, once you get vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Never mind, you do have to wear a mask. Just like when COVID first came out, Dr. Fauci. People in general know you don't have to wear a mask. Never mind, you do have to wear a mask. Then same thing with the vaccine. Oh, you don't have to wear a mask. Never mind, you do have to wear a mask. So the science that's never wrong contradicts itself month after month. But I'm supposed to trust the science, even though science is built on questioning hypotheses and building on new information. But once they say one thing, you just take it as gospel. Even if they say the opposite the next month, you don't ever question what they're saying. Ever. So again, I'm just going back to because everyone's saying that Colin Powell, it's basically impossible for him to have died or have caught COVID from someone who was vaccinated, because only the unvaccinated can spread COVID. So why is the NFL being permitted and the NBA? Everyone's worried about Kyrie Irving. What about the NBA? Maybe Kyrie Irving's refusing to take the vaccine because of the misinformation that the NBA is spreading. Maybe that's why Kyrie Irving doesn't want to take the vaccine, because he's being misinformed and he's getting his misinformation from the NBA, because they keep putting vaccinated players in COVID protocols. Or the NFL. Maybe he's getting his misinformation from the NFL, because they keep implying that people who are vaccinated can not only catch COVID, but can spread it. And again, all of a sudden now, immunity is completely dependent on 100% of everyone around you being immune. Otherwise, it's not immunity. It doesn't matter what disease or infection it is. It's literally impossible to be immune unless everyone that you come into contact with at any point in your life is also immune. So again, and I said I want this video to be short, but it's pretty much as long as my last video. But again, fam, I just wanted to kind of get this off my chest and ask some questions. Ask some questions about the mass misinformation that everyone is allowing the NFL and the NBA to get away with. Because Colin Powell, it's impossible for him to have died or have caught COVID from anyone who was vaccinated. So I want to know why the NFL is spreading so much misinformation. But anyway, fam, I digress. I know I've repeated it multiple times, but I just really want to ask the question because I hear lies repeated to me multiple times a day, or I don't know if they're lies. You know, sorry, my apologies. I'm questioning the media and politicians and saying that they may have possibly lied to me about something. So I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm sorry. But, you know, I just want to understand. I just want to get a clearer understanding. And I'm just very concerned. I'm very disturbed by the misinformation that the NFL and the NBA, massive multi-billion-dollar organizations, are being allowed to spread. And there's no consequence, no news stories about it, nothing. And I just don't get it. But anyway, fam, like, share, subscribe. That's another video, and peace.
Feel marginalized.
The European Union's equivalent to the FDA, called the European Medicines Agency, looked at data from both clinical trials and the initial vaccine rollout. And they're now recommending the Johnson & Johnson-Janssen COVID-19 vaccine add tinnitus to its list of possible side effects. Here in the U.S., the FDA and CDC have also been looking at the data, and they've actually associated the vaccine with several rare but serious potential adverse health effects, except tinnitus. They say there's no causal relationship between this condition and the vaccine. Diving deeper, lots of things can cause tinnitus, including head injury, sinus congestion, stress, anxiety, autoimmune diseases, and high blood pressure. Plus, ear ringing conditions are so common. The CDC estimates nearly 15% of the general public, over 50 million Americans, experience some form of tinnitus.
Some people spontaneously have hearing changes or have tinnitus or increase their tinnitus for a reason that we cannot explain.
Dr. Susan Schmidt says you'd have to rule out everything else in order to link a patient's tinnitus to the vaccine. The post-vaccine tinnitus sufferers we spoke with sought medical care, but they said providers were reluctant to believe them and unsure about the best treatments. Online support groups also hit roadblocks. George says Facebook shut down his group.
This is something that some people think is misinformation, but it is the truth. It is actually happening.
Some medical providers urge the FDA, CDC, and researchers to be open-minded and fully investigate these vaccine recipients' symptoms.
If there are side effects, we need to educate the public about them. We need to know about them so we can give people the right advice.
Now, 6 months after his latest COVID shot, Robert's tinnitus has quieted significantly. Knowing what you know now, would you have gotten the vaccine?
I would have gotten the vaccine. I just wish my doctors knew how to treat it, and I wish I knew to go and see a doctor sooner.
The ABC 15 investigators also contacted the vaccine manufacturers, Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. All three urge people to report adverse events that could potentially be associated with the vaccine. Pfizer added that there's no evidence that tinnitus is associated with its vaccine. And Johnson & Johnson also said this, that it strongly supports raising awareness of signs and symptoms of these rare events so they can be identified and treated. It's also working closely with the FDA to assess potential updates to its fact sheet. Katie.
And Melissa, as they go ahead and start seeking medical care, are they able to find any relief from this?
Well, the people that we talked to say that the ringing in their ears has lessened or completely resolved itself in the months since their COVID shots. Though this is also important, that doctors we talk to say tinnitus is treatable, and whatever the cause, you should go and seek a doctor's advice right away.
Yeah, especially to get rid of that. It's got to be awful in the meantime. Melissa, thank you.